Good evening. Welcome. Thank you for coming out. We're going to wait a minute or so for a few more people to join. I know we had a full house of 100 people sign up. So, welcome to this evening's presentation on the ins and outs of laneway housing in Toronto. A couple of housekeeping things. If you're having any technical difficulties, use the chat box, and Siki, one of our staff who is very kindly working late this evening to help me with this, will try to help you out with them. Through the presentation, we won't be running the chat box, but we will be using the Q&A function for any questions. So we'd like to take questions. Please type them in. Siki may answer some of them. There will be several pauses during the presentation when I will respond to questions that I can. If I don't get to your question, don't worry about it. Please just shoot us an email afterwards. We'll give you the email address at the end to be happy to respond at that point. It may well be that I get to it later in the presentation, so a lot of your answers may already be picked up then. So I see we've got probably about a third of the people who were planning to come on board right now. So I'm going to start a slow rollout. It's a 1 hour presentation, an hour and 5 minutes or so. I try to pack a lot in. So if you don't catch everything, don't worry about it. There is a guide available on our website, a free guide to laneway housing. Again, after the presentation, we'll send a follow-up email and you'll get instructions where to download that guide. It covers all the same material, albeit in a slightly different format, but you don't have to worry about missing anything. It'll be there in the guide. Certainly, you can email me and there'll be an opportunity we'll explain where if you want to consult with me about your property, you can do that as well. So I think we're going to start off here. Then a little introduction. My name is Daniel Hall. I am a licensed architect, have been since 2009. I was always been interested in green building, became a very early LEED accredited professional. Prior to going to architecture school, the first half of my working career so far was as a carpenter and woodworker, licensed Red Seal carpenter across the country, and apprenticed as a furniture maker. So I've been working since 1985, basically, in the building field. The last 10 years as a licensed architect. About 15 years ago, after graduating from school, I embarked on a project with a partner in a company called Sustain Design Studio to pursue our interest in making deep green, modular, portable, off-grid houses. So what you see on the left, the mini home, was our first prototype of that. CSA certified to an RV standard, built here in Ontario by Northlander Industries. We debuted it at the National Home Show in 2006. That's the interior on the bottom left. And had a lot of interest in it. Since then, I sold my interest in the company and have focused on green design in all of its aspects. For the last 10 years, the vehicle that we've been working in is the Architect Builders Collaborative, Inc. And no, we are not builders, we are collaborators, we are architects. We say we're fighting climate change by making low carbon buildings. This is our office pre-COVID. My management team up top, Aisha, myself, and Salvador, and some of our staff members down below. And this is our office as it looks today, as I'm sure many of your workplaces do. So we're well set up. We work remotely really well. So we find it's going well. And I think we're mostly keeping our spirits intact. Looking forward to getting back to our offices at the Center for Social Innovation in Regent Park. Soon as we can, though, I'm sure, like the rest of you. In the meantime, we've taken our very popular seminar series on laneway housing that I was conducting at coffee shops and some real estate offices and even places like Epilepsy Toronto around the city, and brought it online into this webinar format that I'm doing tonight. So what was an hour and a half presentation with questions, we've condensed it to an hour to not take too much of your time. As I said, I will take some questions through the presentation. It will help if I understand a bit about why you're here today. So if you would take a few minutes, Siki's going to put up a little poll. If you could check off any of the boxes that apply as to what your interests are in laneway housing, what made you want to come out or stay in and listen to the webinar. So Siki, thank you very much. So while you're taking a minute to that, I will go through some of what I will be covering tonight, it's really the what you can build, where you can build, how you can build, how much it costs, what kind of steps you need to follow, how to get started. So a lot of the common questions that we find people have and they bring to the presentation. So I'm seeing you filling out your answers there. Thank you very much. As I said, as we go through, you'll have questions for sure. Please type them into the Q&A box. I may get to the answer anyways. Siki will answer where she can. She may say it's coming up. Stay tuned. And at moments like this, I will take questions that you have submitted and respond to them at that time. So I see a bunch of you have responded to the poll already. I think we will move on. Thank you very much. Let's see why you're here. Yeah, quite common. A lot of you, 3/4, are interested in the rental income potential. We're certainly going to talk about that, about the economics of this, what it costs, how it works. Always a number of people looking to how we can make multi-generational housing for our parents, for our adult children, to escape our adult children maybe, our own retirement home, that kind of living on the space. Definitely can look at that. People looking at it, maybe looking at buying a property and wondering what it takes to have potential as an investment for a laneway property. Definitely a way to share where you live, to share your house. We've even looked at co-housing examples with one group that has 6 people sharing ownership of a house, building a laneway suite so they can further enlarge their co-housing community. So lots of good reasons. It's pretty exciting thing here. And let me just close this out and we will move on. So as I mentioned, Q&A to your questions. I'll take the breaks to try to answer them. After the webinar, we'll send you an email follow-up with the instructions, a link to download our free guide to laneway housing. It will pick up the material I'm talking about now, so feel free to take screenshots, but the same material will be there in the guide. You can book a full laneway suite site assessment with us. That's a $450 service and involves an in-person visit to your site with COVID conditions and physical distancing. It's outside work. Follow-up report, and then most importantly, a one-on-one with me, a Zoom call for 45 minutes to an hour. We go through any questions you have after the report and after this, and talk about your next steps, what you want to do. If you're not sure if that's for you, what we've set up here is that you can book a 15-minute one-on-one chat with me. And again, there'll be a link to where to do this afterwards. We do ask for $50 e-payment for that. If you go forward with the assessment, we credit that to your assessment, okay? So it's no charge if you're going forward. If you're not sure about the investment, this is a kind of easy way to find out for sure. What I can do on that call for most people is go through what I'm going to do now with the 3 key factors that determine if you in fact can build a laneway house. So I will run through with that to the best of my ability. We can do a lot of online maps and photos. You may have a survey you can send me. So generally we can help you decide and know if your property is eligible. Therefore, is it worth going through the assessment to figure out what and how you can build? Okay, so we've set it up that way. 2 steps if you want to go that route. So I'm really excited. We all are at our firm about what we can do to transform laneways from Toronto, from what you see in the middle, to pop-up events like on the left. That's got nothing to do with housing, but that's our old office at 401 Richmond. This happened once a year, this pop-up Sparty. And on the right, this is Vancouver. This is where laneway housing in Toronto really got its start about 12, 13 years ago. Really took off there. What we're talking about in Toronto is not the same. Our bylaws are different. One key differentiating factor, you'll see those are really houses behind houses. They look like little cottages. In Vancouver, you have to have a lot that's at least 35 feet wide before you can build a laneway house on it. In Toronto, that would rule out most of our lots. So we have a different, more urban kind of condition here than in Vancouver. But in other regards, we've really followed their lead a lot. So what can you do in Toronto? Let's talk about laneway houses, laneway suites. You'll hear me use both terms. They mean the same thing to all of us. To the city, there was a key distinguishing feature. A laneway house, for the last 15 years when we've talked about it with them, is a house behind a house, and no, they didn't want to go there. They said one property, one house. That's really it. But you could have a secondary suite, as they call them, your basement apartment. That's a secondary suite in zoning language. And then someone, I think it was Joanne Flatt or Craig Race, who really pushed with Evergreen and to advocate for laneway housing, one day had the bright idea to say, what if we call it a laneway suite? It's the same as if we took that basement apartment and moved it up and put it on top of your garage. And it was this aha moment, laneway suite. We can do that. That is secondary. So the city defines a laneway suite as a house on the same lot as the detached house. Oh, it is a house behind a house, actually, but smaller in scale, subordinate to the main house. They are now allowed everywhere in the city. For the first year of the bylaw, they were only allowed on a trial basis downtown. In July 2019, the full 25-member council voted this in across the city. Laneway suites, laneway houses, whatever you want to call them, are here to stay. Where can you build them? Anywhere in the city of Toronto where you have a public laneway. 300 kilometers of those laneways exist in the city, about 49,000 properties on those laneways. You'll see in a few minutes why not all of them are eligible, but this is a lot of extra housing. Think of what 49,000 condo units take up in terms of space. That volume of housing spread out, you won't even notice it's there. It's pretty exciting. So can you build it? Well, a lot of you have that question. There are 3 key factors that determine if you can build a laneway suite. Number 1, it's obvious, I'll say, but does your property abut a public laneway for at least 3.5 meters, about 11 feet for those imperial folks? Those green lines faintly you can see on the map, those are all the laneways in the city, the legal laneways. So I stress public lane. I see at least probably twice a week someone approaches me about a property that has a laneway on it and it's not public. It might be a private right-of-way. It might be a series of right-of-ways strung together across your neighbor's property. In some cases, they look exactly like a lane. You can't even tell they're not. However, if it's not on the city list of public lanes, these bylaws don't apply. And an as of right solution, you'll hear that phrase a lot tonight, as of right, meaning within the zoning bylaw, you don't have to ask any special permission or consent to build it. You still need a building permit, but if you meet building code rules, you have a right to build. Okay, so that's key, and that's why they instituted these bylaws, because up till now, some people were able to get permission for a laneway suite through a minor variance committee of adjustment process or an appeal to the old Ontario Municipal Board, the OMB. City Council said, let's make this work. Let's get a clear set of rules. You can follow them. And then, yes, you have permission. So that's as of right. Okay. A house that abuts a private laneway will not be as of right. It doesn't mean we can't do it. In some cases, it may be possible. It's a different process. That's definitely an Ask Daniel afterward question. Okay. I can't speak to that tonight. That's what the city would call a garden suite. 5 years from now, we might have permission for those. They are in the process of studying it, but they haven't even actually started the study other than ask staff to do it. Okay, and that's been a year ago they asked. Nothing's been done on it yet. So don't hold your breath. Okay, rule number 1, public lane. Number 2, you need to provide emergency access. Does it say this in the zoning bylaw? No, it doesn't. This is not about zoning. Okay, so this is not something that your preliminary project review, for those of you familiar with the city process, will not determine this for you. This is something that is determined during the building permit review, and it's determined by the city building department actually referring to the Toronto Fire Services to say to them, what do you consider adequate? So there's a memorandum of understanding recently made public through access to information that describes how they determine it. And fire department says we have 2 ways. So this little map I've got here on the right, this is around Pape and Gerrard area. The dashed blue lines are laneways, okay? And this is from the city data maps, and you can see all the houses and their little properties lined up there and a couple of garages there. So first rule, property in the blue meets this rule. You can have a 1 meter wide passageway, 1 meter, 3'4" wide, 2.1 meters high, 7 feet high. Okay, so I'm not that tall, 7 feet high. I'm off the screen here. 1 by 2.1, continuous space for a firefighter fully loaded with her gear to haul the hose from the curb, from the truck to the door of your laneway suite. They will go up to 45 meters. That's not a problem on pretty much any property I've seen in Toronto because they're not that deep that it's more than 45 meters from the curb. Okay, so that's great, except look at all those properties. That's the only one on this sample of the map of all of those laneway abutting properties that meets this test. So it's a laneway, right? You can access it off the laneway. Absolutely right. So the fire department also says, sure, our firefighters will go 45 meters up the laneway to get to your house. Okay, that's a meter wide, 2.1 meters high. You're good. Okay, so they can get to the back door or the front door of your laneway suite on the laneway. So all these other properties in blue now meet that test up the laneway from the street. What they won't do is drive their fire truck up the laneway. I'm not saying they won't do it. They probably will do anything they need to get to a fire. They won't promise to do that. Therefore, they take the measurement from the curb of a public street. That's a really important criteria because it rules a whole bunch of properties that look like you could easily get to them with a fire truck, and they'll say, sorry, we can't do it. Even if the lane's 20 feet wide, we've seen them say, sorry, we won't drive up a lane, okay? I don't agree with that, but that's how the rules work. So that's what you need to know. So there is an exception, a couple of them. First, you don't have 1 meter on your property, but you have it between you and your neighbors. A very typical classic Toronto situation, okay? You have this walkway, you've always shared it, you take your garbage cans in and out, you take your bikes to your backyard, you both own a piece of it. Maybe you even have it legally on paper that you both have a right over it. That's rare, but people do, like a common driveway. If you do, that's fine. You're good to go. If you don't, the city has instituted a way to get that approval without going through the full complexity of easements being installed on title through Committee of Adjustment. They've developed a process called a limiting distance agreement. There's information on the city website. You can get a link from our website, from our guide. It's a form you download, you fill it out with your neighbors. Lawyers get involved for sure. You need to register this on title. You need to pay the city solicitor their fees. I don't know the exact fee that they charge for it, but it's a lot simpler than what you had to do before. So it's going to cost you a couple of $1,000s with all the legal fees involved. Bear in mind, no matter what you do for a laneway suite application, you will need a current accurate survey. So you may need to get it for this process, but you're going to need it anyways. Surveys typically ballpark $2,000, $2,500, that range for a proper legal survey suitable to use to apply for a building permit. Okay, so if you don't have one, put that on your to-do list. So there's another exception. Now this one I've put in orange because it's not for certain yet. This has not been codified. If it has, they have not released an updated memorandum of understanding about this. This came out of a recent Building Code Commission ruling, and the Building Code Commission is like the final court of appeal for building code issues. Panel of 3 experts in the code, backed by the Ministry of Housing staff, who makes final rulings on whether or not a particular proposal in a building permit application satisfies the requirements of the code. We appeal to the Building Code Commission when we don't agree with the city plan reviewer's opinion of something. Okay, it's a really good, very informal, actually very accessible process. Thank goodness we live in a democracy. We have these kinds of processes available to us when the officials and the bureaucrats say no and it's unreasonable. So what happened here? There was a property, not this one, but there was a property about 75 meters up the lane to the door of the laneway suite. In fact, the lane was big enough you could have driven the fire truck up it. So first they said is, look, your fire truck can go up the lane. There's no reason they can't. And the department said no. They said, okay, what if we put sprinklers in the building? So they proposed a residential sprinkler system, cost about $30,000 for a system like that. And the building department said no. So my friends who were involved in this appealed to the Building Code Commission, and they won. And they won with several very strong arguments. But a really interesting smoking gun was a 2013 email internal from the Toronto Fire Services to the building department discussing their options when they were drafting these bylaws and the rules. And they said in that email, if it were between 45 and 90 meters and there were sprinklers, that would be good. So this has been done once. I'm very much of the belief that if you went with a similar situation and the same solution back to the same Building Code Commission panel, you will get the same answer. I'm also fairly confident that it's only going to take 2 or 3 people to do that before Toronto Fire changes their tune. In fact, I was told by one of Anna Balau, Councillor Balau, who really we owe her a huge debt of gratitude for making laneway houses possible. She and Councillor McMahon made this happen. One of Councillor Balau's staffers told me a couple of weeks back that the day after that Building Code Commission ruling was published, the councillor received a phone call from the deputy fire chief saying, can we talk? So we think change is in the works. It may already have arrived, but they don't tell us these things. It's kind of a secret backroom process. So bear that in mind. 45 to 90 meters. This is key because most people think you can't do this. This doubles the number of properties pretty much that are eligible for laneway suites. So rule number 3, trees. Again, not in the zoning bylaw, not in the building code even. This is the purview of urban forestry. We in Toronto are very unusual in Ontario municipalities that we have a private tree bylaw that regulates what you can do to trees on your own property. And it protects any tree that is larger than 30 centimeters in diameter, 12 inches at chest height roughly. Any tree like that is subject to the bylaw and therefore is protected from harm and injury. And that takes the form of what they call a tree protection zone. It's like a keep out area around the base of the tree. You'll see it like this photo, frequently snow fencing erected by builders around trees. That's to make sure no one walks there, no one drives their truck or parks there. Now, it also means you can't build in that area. So a tree can make the difference between whether or not you can build. Now, it's not to say that it's impossible if you have a tree in your yard or your neighbor's yard for that matter, but we have to take a closer look at it. It's the kind of thing we look at in our field assessment. We may need to get a professional arborist involved, and we have on a couple of cases been able to negotiate with urban forestry a solution where how we do our structure, how we do our foundations and our digging in such a way that we're not going to do serious harm to the tree roots. And we have been told we can build right up beside a 150-year-old oak tree in East York because we are not going to damage the roots. Okay, so it's not a deal breaker, but urban forestry has an absolutely categorical veto right. You cannot appeal their decision. If urban forestry says no, you're done. Okay, so we want to look at that first, understand if trees are going to be an issue. If they are, get an arborist involved. Talk to urban forestry. We can talk to urban forestry before you go the rest of the way down the path with drawings and permits and everything else. So line up your decision making in that order. So it's quiz time. Siki, please name 3 key things that are going to determine if you're allowed to build a laneway house. So while you are checking off what you think those 3 things are, I will take questions if there's been any submitted. Siki, any questions yet?
Yes, we got one question from Mark Sherman. He wants to know, can we build a basement? Can we have a basement?
Mark, that's a great question. I will touch on it, but we might as well talk about it now. Sure. Yes, you can build a basement. The zoning bylaw does not say anything about it. They are allowed. They do not count as a story in terms of height. The issue with basements typically is going to be, is it good value to build it? Because the cost of excavating can be fairly high if you have buildings right beside you that we have to shore up so they don't cave in. So in a big open area, it's not a problem. If you're tied up against a couple of neighbors' buildings or there's trees close by, it could be a factor. So definitely, yes, it's there. I'll touch on it a little bit more when we talk about what you can build. This first focus is on where you can build, but it's a good thing to remember. So I've had a chance to film in a bit. Let's see what people had to say. So yeah, the biggest reason, are there large trees? Maybe I stressed that too much. It's an important reason. It is absolutely important. Emergency access for firefighters, I would actually say, is probably the biggest stumbling block that we encounter. Is there a public lane? Yes, absolutely critical. It has to be there. Does the city pick up garbage from the laneway? I put that in there because sometimes people are under the impression that if the city services off the laneway with garbage pickup, or if they've named the lane, that it gives you a different right to build on it. That's not actually the case. Does this lane have a name? Nobody fell for that one, but I put it in because, again, we hear it a lot. Oh, I thought it had to have a name. The distance to the nearest fire hydrant, absolutely right. Some people have been reading the bylaws. Yes, there is a requirement, it's actually not in the bylaw, that the fire hydrant, it was expressed once as 90 meters from the laneway suite, but it's been redefined as 45 meters from where the fire truck is going to park. So it's 45 to the fire truck from the hydrant, 45 from the truck to the door of your laneway suite. So depending where you can demonstrate that the truck can safely park. I don't consider it a very important factor. It is important. It's can stop a project, but we haven't seen that yet because fire hydrants are generally quite well distributed in the city. So far that has not been the determining factor for any of our clients if they could or couldn't build. Which ward do you live in? It used to be a factor. Up till July 2019, you could only build in the former city of Toronto. Since July 2019, all 25 wards of Toronto are eligible. So, acceptable fire access, adjacent to a public lane, large trees nearby. Those are the three things. There are others, but those are the three to bear in mind. Okay, what can you build? Well, size matters. It certainly does. The city had said, as you remember in my description, that a laneway house shall be subordinate to the main house. Now, they don't literally mean it has to be shorter than. It does have to be smaller in overall area, though, but not necessarily shorter. But there are limits on height. That's where they start. So a garage is allowed to be 4 meters under the current bylaw. A laneway suite can go to 6 meters and 2 stories. So that's the key. They've really said we can do 2-story buildings. We can put an apartment on top of a garage or skip the garage altogether. Then they say, but you have to have a certain separation from your house. We don't want to be too close. For the 2-story building, it's 7.5 meters. And then there's this funny, what I call a keep out zone between 7.5 meters and 9.5 meters from the rear main wall. And more than 4 meters above the ground, there's this little area defined by a 45-degree angle, and you can't build in that area other than some limited dormers. As soon as you step more than 9.5 meters away from the back wall of your house, though, you can go straight up to the 6-meter height. So it doesn't mean you have to have this angular plane on the back unless you're very close to your house. 7.5 meters away for a 2-story building. And then no matter how deep your lot is, a maximum 10-meter depth for your building. 32'9", a rough translation there. And then you have to be a further 1.5 meters or 5 feet back from the edge of the laneway. Now that's the legal edge of the laneway. You'll find that in your survey. You can usually pick it out on the ground, depending on how the laneway is built. Okay, so 1.5 meters back. We add all that up, 1.5 plus 7.5 is 9, and a maximum 10 meters is 19. If you have 19 meters or more from the back wall of your house to the lot line, you can build the maximum depth. You can build less, but that's the maximum. Now, you're also allowed as a maximum to go lot line to lot line up to 8 meters. If you're lucky enough to have a 10-meter wide lot, it's 8 meters wide. Okay? But lot line to lot line, that is very unusual in the city for zoning. Zero clearance, zero setback, not easily done though, because the actual constructability comes in. If your neighbor's got a garage there and you're going to put a wall up against it, how are you going to finish that wall if you're right up against it? So yes to zoning, not always the ideal solution, but we have that option. Furthermore, you're not allowed to build your foundation and footings off your lot. So your typical foundation wall comes down and goes out and gets wider at the footing. That widest point has to be on your property. So really what we find is that the actual outside wall of your laneway suite is usually stepped back. There are exceptions to all of this, but they get more complex and expensive to implement. 1 story, very similar set of rules. 8 meters wide, lot line to lot line, 1.5 meters back from the lane, 10-meter maximum depth. But a 1 story is defined as 4 meters or less in height. And in that case, you only have to be 5 meters away from the house. So that's about 16 feet or so from your main house. So if you only want 1 story, if this is for a fully accessible place to age gracefully in place, you can go closer to your house. Or conversely, if you have a shallow lot, maybe you don't have room for a 2-story, but you could get to build a 1 story. And here's where the basement comes in, because it's been suggested to me by a client that, well, what if I build a 1 story and put a basement in it? And interestingly, you have 4 meters of height. That's 13.5 feet to play with. So you could lift up your ground floor, not like we're showing it here at grade. You lift your ground floor up 2 to 3 feet, like most people's houses in Toronto, sneak your basement underneath it. Now you have 1 story with a basement, feels like a 2-story. Maybe you get a couple of windows in there, and you still fall in the 1-story rule for size and envelope. So a really clever solution. Again, comes with cost of excavation, waterproofing, things like that. So we go up on the roof. So on the roof, you can put a variety of things: green roof, solar panels, a roof access hatch, some mechanical equipment. You can put a screen around that equipment. There are some rules. It has to be set back a bit from your building envelope. There's a couple of technicalities on it, but basically that range of things. What can't you put on the roof? You cannot put a deck on the roof, okay? For all of you who've typed that question in already, I haven't seen them, but there's usually one at least. Sorry, no decks on the roof. So you could have a green roof and go up your roof hatch skylight that opens up. Velux makes a really nice one. Put a ladder up to it and go out and tend your garden and garden on the roof. Now, you better be careful because there's no guard railing. You can't put a guardrail up there, and you can't use it as a deck. And that's really to respect your neighbor's privacy. You can have decks on the second floor level. They can be up to 10% of the area of your building, and they have to fit within that whole rule of setback. So what that effectively means is we have to decide, do you want outdoor space for your deck or indoor space for your laneway suite? We can't have both. You can't cantilever on the space. So a little different than a balcony on your house, for example. So a couple of other rules of note that can limit what you build. The footprint cannot exceed 30% of your lot area. And the overall size of the building expressed in square feet, not counting basements, your gross floor area must be less than that of your main house. So even though you have the right to a 10 meter by 8 meter building, 80 square meters by 2 stories, 160 square meters, 1,700 square feet of living area, that's your maximum. If your main house is only 1,500 square feet, then the city's going to say, sorry, you can only build 1,499 on your laneway property. We've seen the situation where the main house is a bungalow, and our clients wanted to build a really nice new 2-story house for themselves and rent out the bungalow. And we ran into this difficulty with it. So it would be a trip to committee of adjustment. Or if you could afford it, add on to the main house at the same time and you're good. It's kind of silly, but that's the way bylaws work. So what about parking? Always a concern in developing projects. So as you may know, if you have a single family home, you need 1 parking space. You add your basement apartment, your secondary suite, you still only need 1 space. You add 2 apartments to it, so 3 dwelling spaces, 2 parking spaces. You add a laneway house to the equation, and you go from 2 parking spaces to 0 parking spaces. Yes, 0. The city bylaw says if you build a laneway suite, the parking requirement for your whole property, regardless of what else is on it, is 0. Now, before you rush off and say, I'm getting rid of my parking, I'm going to get a permit on the street, bear in mind that they've also said, sure, you can apply for the permit, but we're going to treat you as though you still have off-street parking. So you will go to the bottom of the wait list if there is one, and you will pay the full rate as though you had a parking space already available to you. So bear that in mind. There's always the option to design with a garage that can be converted later to living space. That's a really interesting one to consider, because down the road, maybe you won't have a private car. Bicycles, you're going to have bikes, I'm sure. I mean, if you're our clients, you probably ride your bike to our office because that's what we do. So bikes, you have to have two spots to park bikes on your property. It doesn't say where. You could put them in that 1.5 meter setback from the laneway. They won't be there for long in the city of Toronto, so we wouldn't recommend that. But 2 spots anywhere on the property or in the laneway suite. Don't forget about landscaping, soft landscaping in particular. So this is stuff that absorbs water. The city says when you build your laneway suite, depending on the width of your lot, you need to have either 60% if your lot's less than 6 meters wide, or if it's wider, 85% of your backyard soft landscaping. By backyard, we go from the rear main wall of your house to the front wall of the laneway suite, take that space in between, calculate what it is, what's 85% of that, that's your soft landscaping. This illustration is a 60% diagram. So you get a sense when you've got patio and deck, what that looks like. And it also says that spot between your laneway house and the laneway needs to be 75% soft landscaping. And the sharp ones among you are going, Daniel, you guys can't draw, or you don't know what 75% looks like because there's 2 tiny little green rectangles there. Sorry, we do know what we're doing. The bylaw also says you don't count the access to a parking spot, i.e. the driveway. That's how they call a driveway, okay? So if you have a driveway to a garage, you don't count that in your calculation. 75% of what's left has to be soft landscaping. What is soft landscaping? Well, things that absorb water, okay? This is planter beds, grass, mulch, things like that. Beautiful outdoor hardscaped rooms, which are fantastic features on Toronto small backyards, are not soft landscaping. If you want to have this and a laneway suite, you'll be making a trip to committee of adjustment and asking their permission. The few that we witnessed have always gotten permission. So this may be one of the things that gets tweaked when council has staff review how the bylaw is working in the coming year. It's one of the main things people are going to committee of adjustment for. And in my opinion, if you were to provide a green roof, you achieve all the same objectives as the soft landscaping is doing. However, that's not codified in the bylaw. That's just a really good argument to go to committee of adjustment with. So, quiz time. Who's been paying attention here? Based on what I've just told you now, it's your turn to assess. There are 6 properties here. 3 of these are not like the others. I feel like I'm on Sesame Street. A, B, and C across the top, D, E, and F across the bottom. Please check off which 3 of those would comply as of right. Remember that term, as of right, fully compliant with the zoning bylaws that I've just described to you. While you're thinking about it, Siki, I'd be glad to answer a couple more questions.
Yes. So Marty wants to know, do you recommend a builder once we have the design?
Yes, we certainly can. There's a number of builders we know. I'll touch a little bit down the road on the things you want to look for in a good builder who gets laneway housing. Next question.
If you build a laneway house, do you need to rip out your basement to run the plumbing from the main house to the laneway house?
Stay tuned. We're going to talk about that in just a couple of minutes. Another question?
So if you have a basement apartment in your main house, can you still build a laneway house and make it as a third suite on the properties?
Very good question. Yes, the clear answer is yes, you can. There was confusion around this because in the draft version of the bylaws, one of the options was no, that you could either have the basement or the laneway suite. The way the bylaw got written in the end, it was decided that you can have both. Council wants to encourage this form of intensification. It's smart growth. It's taking advantage of existing services and infrastructure. So the answer is yes, you can have both a laneway suite and a basement apartment. In fact, you can have 2 subsidiary apartments. So you could have 3 units in your house, if that's what your zoning permits on the property, and at a laneway suite. In theory, you could have 4, 5, or 6, whatever your zoning allows in our zone, up to 6 units, and add a laneway suite behind it. And as I mentioned before, if you do that, you don't need parking for any of those suites. You got to think about whether your tenants want the parking or not. But very interesting, those of you looking from the investment perspective, to think about how that affects your decisions. So let's take a look at who is paying attention here. A, yes, you're absolutely correct. Number A, this is a classic coach house apartment over a garage, fully compliant. The next most popular answers in a tie, C and E. Yes to both of those. Absolutely right. Little clue, those 4 letters, TABC in the corner of the picture. You might have noticed those are the initials of our company, the Architect Builders Collaborative. Those are our designs. You might have noticed another thing about them. Those are photoshopped in renderings. We have not built those designs yet. Those are examples of our ready-to-build, fully zoning compliant designs. The other 3 images that you see there, beautiful houses on laneways, some of them built by friends of mine, predate the zoning bylaw, and not a single one of them would be allowed under the bylaw as it's written today. And in fact, these were all worked through either with variances or OMB appeals or grandfathering in existing conditions. In fact, some of these examples almost sunk the whole project because they created the impression that laneway housing was going to be really fancy bespoke houses for well-off people. And council was not actually that well disposed to that idea. And I don't think most Torontonians are either. So it really focused on scale. Laneway houses smaller in scale, shorter, 2-story, 6 meters. That's a really big criteria. So that's what we're going to see is smaller scale developments. So we touched on questions about the bylaws and what you can build. Again, this is all covered in our guide. Now let's take a look at that question that came about servicing and plumbing and drains. So the city says in the bylaws that these services for your laneway house shall come from the same service connections that the main house uses. And we're talking about city services, meaning sewer and water. So those almost always in Toronto are not in the laneway. It might look like they are, but they're not. They're in the street. What you see in the laneway often are wires overhead that are telephone and bell wires, and occasionally grates for storm drains. There's an exception, Wendigo Way in Etobicoke, I was on there recently. Yeah, it has sewer and water in the laneway. 95% of the houses I've looked at, sewer and water is in the main street. So we will want to connect to the same connection. We can't add a new connection. We can go down beside your house if you have room, or we can go through the house if you don't. So what does this look like? Start with electricity. It's easy. It's Toronto Hydro. This is not regulated by zoning or building codes. I highly recommend to our clients that you add a second hydro meter and a separate service for the laneway suite, especially if you're talking about renting it out separately. If it's purely for your own family use, one bill might be fine. Get a separate bill, The people living in the Laneway suite pay for their own heating and cooling, hot water, cooking, all of that, and they will conserve energy. It's the best incentive to respect the environment that there is. It also means you're not going to have trouble if you want to charge an electric car in the future. You're not going to have problems with overloading power on your own service. So Toronto Hydro is very obliging. They will put in second, third meters. If you have an apartment, they'll give each apartment a meter if you ask. Very easy to do. Run the line across a conduit down the side of your house, drop it underground, bury it 2 feet deep at least, and up you go to a new panel. Water. Water's not quite so easy, but similar. So the water meter is typically at the front of your basement, most houses in Toronto. You have to use that same meter, one service, 1 meter. As soon as you get downstream of the meter, we recommend that you tie off a branch line with a shutoff and a new 3/4 inch line, and we run that all the way back to the Laneway suite. That's so you don't get pressure problems. Someone flushes the toilet in the Laneway suite, you're not going to feel it in your shower in your main house. If you tie off to the end of your laundry sink that's facing your backyard and that little 1/2 inch plumbing line there, you're going to have pressure problems. So worth doing this. Now, water lines have to be protected from freezing, obviously. And we do that under the building code in Toronto by burying things minimum of 4 feet below the ground. Because cold air in the winter, the frost, it actually freezes from the top down. Below 4 feet or so, the ground never actually freezes. So we have to go 4 feet deep. We bury and go down, and then we come back up into your Laneway suite. So not too difficult. It requires a trench, maybe a torpedoing of a line. Sewers, these are the most complicated part here. So the sewer runs the other way. It starts from your Laneway suite and runs downhill always, 1/4 inch per foot, sloping downhill all the way. And it too has to be protected from freezing. So it starts at least 4 feet below grade and gets deeper. So you can imagine if your Laneway suite is a long way from your house, that's a lot of drop. By the time you reach your house, there's a very good chance that your sewer is going to be deeper than your existing basement floor. This is something in a site assessment we're looking for, analyzing for you and figuring out what your solution is. So if you're lucky, everything lines up nicely. You tie into an existing sewer. That sewer is in great condition. Always recommend you get a scope check done to determine whether the sewer is in good shape before you tie onto it. And you're good to go. Worst case, you arrive 1 or 2 feet deeper than the existing basement floor, and you don't have any sewer lines in decent shape there anyway, so you need to do something about it. And the solution is something called a sewage ejector pump. Ejector, it lifts it like a sump pump. It collects the sewage, it fills up, it activates a float, and it pumps it out. Unlike a sump, it's fully sealed and hygienic. I have one in my own house. They work really, really well. It will lift the sewage up and put it into a line at any height you want, so it's not a problem to get it to run downhill from there. What you will have to do often is create a pit for this, and that might mean some local underpinning, excavation, breaking up your basement floor. If it's a fully finished apartment, you have to take that into account. We're going to be doing some work in that apartment. If you're planning an apartment or finishing your basement down the road, and you're thinking one day you'll want a Laneway suite, talk to someone like me first, figure out what you're going to need to do and build it in when you do your work in the basement now, and then it's ready for you. It'll save you a lot of time and money. So speaking of money, show me the money. Rule number 1 in all my conversations about money and budget with clients, because budget is a design tool. It's something your architect, your designer needs to know and to understand to help you. Our first conversation starts out by me saying project cost does not equal construction cost. Did you hear that? Do you understand? Project cost is what you're going to spend. It's what's going to come out of your bank account when you're done, when everything's in. You've paid all your taxes. Everything is included. Construction cost is what the builder that you were talking to last week says, you know what, we can build a beautiful Laneway house for you for $225 a square foot. She's quoting construction cost, okay? Doesn't include any of the other 7 things on this chart. To drum that in, project cost is not the same as construction cost. I like to say construction cost is what your neighbor told you they paid for theirs last year. What goes into it? Number 1 cost in building in Toronto is land. It is so off the chart that it's off my chart and off the top of my screen. And we don't have to care about it because you have the land already. We're assuming that's what a Laneway house is all about. You're building a second building on land you already have. So that cost goes away, which is why a Laneway house of the same size as a condo costs you half as much. Pretty much, pretty good rule of thumb. Next, in gray, soft costs, committee of adjustment hearing maybe, building permits, finance costs, The cost of putting those services, this I consider a fixed cost. It's fixed based on your site. If you need an ejector pump, you need an ejector pump. There's nothing we can do about it. So we can help you determine these costs, but they're fixed from a budgeting perspective. HST, don't forget HST. You need to pay this on everything. Now, you may be able to get a partial rebate of the HST. I'll talk about that a little more later. These three things, these are the big money: construction, furniture, fixtures, and appliances. These are things you have some control over and affect what you build. How much you build affects this cost. How you build it affects this cost. What your choice of finishes are can definitely affect this cost. Is it a granite countertop or a laminate countertop? Huge difference in price. And then that little pink one at the bottom that's kind of lurking there. Don't forget about contingency. Okay? Contingency. Very important. This is not, please, please, please don't tell me your contingency fund is money you have in your RRSP, and if you have to spend it, you will. Don't tell me it's your kids' college money, because you will spend it. The only thing we don't know about the contingency is what you're going to spend it on yet. You may end up spending it on that ejector pump or replacing the broken clay sewer pipe that you discover that's under your basement already. That's not much fun. You may luck out and get to spend it on a green roof. That was on your nice to have list. Trust me, everyone spends their contingency or most of it. So have it set aside, plan on it. This green one, design and engineering. This is the key to controlling all those other costs. Take the time now. Do what you're doing now. Do your research, do your planning, figure out what you want to build, how you want to build, who you want to build it with. Get a good set of plans. What you spend on design and engineering, you will more than save in the construction process by building smart, building less, building exactly what you need, getting it right, getting a smooth approval process, and not wasting time for months with the city. All of these things will save you money. Invest in here. It controls the other costs. It's also my blatant pitch to hire an architect. But so what does this actually add up to? On a typical kind of project, we are looking at 20 foot by 30 foot coach house, we're calling this one. This is with the garage. Most common ask. Have a garage and an apartment on top. We're working on about 4 of these right now. 1,200 square foot in this example. These are how the different costs line up. Design and engineering, the other soft costs, demolition and site prep, site services, big range there because I haven't seen your house yet. It won't be that big a range once we've seen your house and done an assessment. Foundation cost, construction, there you are. Look, 250 to 300 out of a total of 325 to 480. Do you see how that works? Add about a third as much or half as much again to your construction cost, and you will approximate your project costs. Plus HST, but you are eligible because these are considered new homes. They're new homes under Tarion warranty, which I'll touch on. They're new homes under the HST new home rebate. So you are eligible for a partial rebate. In the case of a reno I did a while ago to my own house, I got back $16,000. It's a bit of paperwork, but don't be suckered in by the companies that are out there offering you to take care of all this for you for a mere 25% of your refund. It's not that much paperwork. If you have a builder that you've hired with a single bill and an invoice for the house, you just submit their total bill on the house. That's your paperwork. And they will refund that kind of order of magnitude, $15,000. You can sort of look at that. So development charges. So this is something we get asked about a lot. For those of you who know, if you've ever bought a condo and hit with those closing charges, the city levies a development charge. It's a tax on new development, and it's intended to pay for a whole range of items that are outlined in provincial legislation: roads, sewers, libraries, rec centers, all of those nice things that we want, the infrastructure that we rely on. So currently, a 2-bedroom apartment will rack up a development charge of $42,000. As of November this year, it's going up to $47,000. It's $28,000 and $30,000 for a 1-bedroom. But City Council has said, we want to encourage you to build these. So they didn't just say you don't have to pay a development charge, and I'm not quite sure why. What they said was you can, under something called a Section 118 form, you can request a deferral of your development charge. And they say it's an indefinite deferral, except if you sever the property. Now, I recommend you take a close look at this and you talk to your lawyer about it, because I've just recently heard from someone who went down this path and they were getting the deferral of their development charge and they went to deal with their financing on the building. And the bank said, we don't want to give you a mortgage until you clear that lien that the city has on your property for the development charge. And they ended up having to pay out the development charge in order to get their financing. So the advice, this person, in fact, was a mortgage broker. And they told me, tell your clients, line up your financing first, then go to the city and defer your development charge so that your finance company already has a claim on your property and they have priority over the city. So the other thing to remember, though, is you have to make this application before you apply for a building permit. So timing is critical. Understand the process. Get professional advice on this because what's at stake is a lot of money, $45,000. Now, if you sever the property, they're going to come looking for their money anyways. They don't want you severing these. Severance, in case you don't understand the term, means when you apply to Committee of Adjustment for permission to divide one property into two, to sever a piece of the property and then sell that piece off. To be very clear, laneway houses are not intended to ever be severed and become separate properties. That's probably a big reason why they use the same services as the house, because it makes it very difficult to sell to someone else when their sewer runs through your basement. Probably don't want to do that. So, is it a good investment? Well, this is where I learned about investing early on, and I got really good at it when my nieces and nephews were young, and I would beat them at Monopoly because I figured out how to invest in houses, didn't I, right? Well, so talk to a financial advisor for real advice. I'm going to give you the simple straight line version. I calculate my return on investment as what I make in income minus the expenses on the rental property divided by how much I spent creating that rental property. It's straight line calculation. Doesn't take real value of money, present day value, all of those things. So the example I gave you, $450,000, let's say, for a project cost. Your expenses will be low because you worked with us and we do really good green design, right? Like it's cheap to maintain and operate. You're a decent landlord, so you're not gouging anyone. You charge $2,500 a month in rent. $30,000 minus expenses, you got $28,000 or so a year, let's say, cost you $450 to buy it. So what is that going to look like? 6.2% return on your investment. Take a look if you've got a strong stomach. Take a look at your stock portfolio from the last 2 months and tell me what percentage you made last year, year over year return on your investment. So I would say it is a pretty good investment. You can make it affordable. You can be a little more affordable with your rent and you can get some funding to do it. So the City of Toronto has said, we're going to help you if you're prepared to really talk about affordable housing with us. We will offer you a $50,000 forgivable loan, that term forgivable, after 15 years. If for those 15 years you agree and you stick to keeping the rent at or below the City of Toronto average market rent. Average market rent, as defined by who? Kijiji, Urban Nation, $2,000, $2,200 a month for a one bedroom. Sorry to say no. It's average market rent as defined by the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, CMHC. And in Toronto right now, they would tell you a one bedroom apartment on average is $1,270 a month. I don't know where they're getting that from. Well, I do, but it's a long story. Could you do it though? Say you took that $50,000 funding and you took a $350,000 very nice house. You could build it for less, but let's just say you took their money and you spent $300 then in your project cost. And you agreed with them. You're only going to charge $1,200. You went better than $1,270. You said $1,200. So you made $12,000 in income after expenses and you spent $300 out of your own pocket. What did you get back on that $300? 4%. Not so bad, actually. And how much risk did you take? Because reward on investment, return on investment is always got to be thought about relative to the risk you're taking. And the risk of this project, I'm going to tell you, is 0%. Because we're talking about renting out for $1,200 a month for a one-bedroom apartment that we spent $350,000 on a nice building. If you can't rent that at $1,200 a month, call me. I will rent it from you. Zero risk. It's quiz time again. Let's hope people are still tuned in. Some true and false questions. Siki, you want to put these up? And while people are answering them, I will answer your questions. Siki, any questions for me?
Yeah. So can we have 2 Laneway suites?
Can you have 2 laneway suites? We do get that question, and I should be clear, no. The city has said a laneway suite is a single dwelling unit in one accessory building. Now, you can have a garage, and it's silent about whether you can have your own space. So we interpret that you can. You can have a room overlooking the garden on the main floor. That's your music studio. It's your garden shed. It's where you keep your bikes. It's whatever you want it to be. You can have your garage and on top of it an apartment, but only one apartment to rent out. Next question.
So are there development charges with having a Laneway suite when there are already 3 suites in the existing house?
Okay. So the short answer is no, there are no development charges with a Laneway suite if you take the city up on that deferral offer. A related question, if you have a single family home and you want to put in and turn it into 3 apartments, the first one of those extra apartments, the city will also give you a free pass on and not charge you development charges on. The second one, they will. However, there is a little loophole that the savvy investors have figured out in this, is that if you have a single family dwelling and you put in 1 apartment, they waive the development charge. You wait a year or 2, you go through the permanent approval process again, and you apply to make another apartment, and they waive the development charge for you again. There are rules around size of secondary suites. It's not quite as easy as I make it sound, but the answer is no development charges apply with Laneway suites if you take the deferral route. So let's see how you answered my questions. True or false? Project costs are the same as construction costs. False, thank you. True or false? Laneway houses are a good investment. Absolutely, 100% of you in agreement with this. True or false? They are affordable housing. Yes, they can be. And I say can because it's not everybody's thing, but it is actually possible when you crunch the numbers. True or false? Site services must be shared with the main house. It is true. So to be very clear, that's a really important one. We have to either go down the side of your house and join into the existing services before we cross the property boundary, or we go through your house and connect up with them. The city won't make a second sewer connection or a second water main connection for you. So something critical to remember. So what does this look like? We've put together for 3 most common situations what we call sort of ready to build. Kind of think of this like the off-the-rack suit. You can tailor it a bit, but it's ready to go. 3 designs. We keep them affordable. It's a $10,000 design instead of a $30,000 custom design, as we might do for a full-on custom project. It's our Laneway collection. We gave them names. The Bungalow, 1 story, fully accessible for aging, roll-in shower, and totally flush with the floor, open concept living. You could add an optional loft to it. You have to start with an 18-foot wide lot if we want the full accessibility. The coach house, this is the most common ask from people, is a garage with an apartment on top. This is what most people envision Laneway housing as. 2 stories, 1 car garage, 1 or 2 bedroom, open concept living, full bathroom. At 16 feet and up, you can get 1 bedroom comfortably. If you have a more than 20 foot wide, it's easy to get 2 bedrooms to work with this. The garden cottage is when you say, I don't need parking, bring on most housing I can get. This is a real house behind a house. 2 stories, 2 or 3 bedroom, 1.5 bathrooms on a 16-foot lot. 2 bedroom works well. Once we're over 20 feet in width, 3 bedrooms fits very nicely. Perfect for families. So this is really a great option if you have the space or you don't need the parking. So we can talk to you more about this stuff afterwards, the ready to build design and how that works, but I want to move on. We have a lot of material to cover and I've almost used up all my time here. So I better step on the gas here. This is what one of these looks like inside. This one has the 45-degree cut on the back to make it fully as of right, assuming you're close to your house. We promised you green design, and I use the term all the time. And I really want to hear from you. What does green design mean to you, please? Because I toss it around. I think I know what it means. I use it like I use love. I love this job. I love my cats. I love my wife. It's the same word. It means so many things. So please, Seek, if you could put up the poll, please tell me what green design means to you. And while you're answering that, check off any of them that applies that you feel is what green design is all about for you. And if there's any more questions right now, I will answer them. Siki, are there any questions?
Seems we're good now.
Okay. I must have been answering a lot as we go. We usually have a pile up by now at this point. So thank you for taking your time. What you're looking at in this picture is a deep energy retrofit of a 110-year-old Victorian semi in the Upper Beach. Classic brick semi-detached house. This house is now carbon zero. When the solar panels are installed on the roof, it will be a net zero home. This is an example of what green design looks like. And this was deep. We went deep on this one, deep green. So let's take a look. Yeah, energy efficiency. That's what it means to most of us. And that's what it's meant for years. And people associate green design with all about energy efficiency. And super important. We don't want to waste energy. But I step back and say, why don't we want to waste energy? Why do we want to conserve energy? And some of it's cost, absolutely, and limited resources. And a big part of it that people are waking up to now is it's also about climate change. And so what's really important isn't just saving energy and heating and cooling your house. It's reducing the carbon footprint of the house, reducing the carbon that's in the house. So if you save energy by piling 6 inches of styrofoam insulation or spray foam into your house, the blowing agents that created that have had an impact on climate change right now from day one. And it's going to take years, depending on the material, quite a lot of years, to pay back that carbon debt you now owe the climate. So one of the answers to that is thinking of natural building materials. So insulation like dense packed cellulose, it's actually made from recycled cardboard. So it's taking and repurposing a material, upcycling it, and it's carbon sequestration because it's wood that's going in there. Solar panels, absolutely important consideration. Durable and low maintenance, airtight and comfortable. Yeah, this is also about energy efficiency and comfort. Affordable. Yes, it's important that green design be affordable or we're not going to do it. And at its heart, it really can be. Not all of it. There are definitely some items that are frills and are expensive. And there are many things you'd be surprised at how you can make it affordable. So all of these things, in fact, in my opinion, are green, but it's really helpful for me to see what you think and not what I think about this. Thank you for taking your time on that. And I will try not to take too much of your time. I got a little bit more to get through here, though, so please excuse me for running a little over. A green building at its core is good building. It's old school building in a way with some new techniques. Triple glazed windows. You could downgrade, save 10, 12% on your window price and blow 35% more heat out the window in the winter. Why would you? You can sit beside a triple glazed window and not be cold. Thermal bridging is a really technical term about how we detail things for efficiency. Add insulation. Often the answer. Put a sweater around your house. Low carbon materials. Plan for airtightness. That red thing on the right-hand side of your picture, that's a blower door test in progress, where we are pressurizing the house before finishing sealing it up so we can find all the leaks and plug them. Efficient HVAC design, really important. The central gas-powered furnace with a central air conditioning system. Cheap to put in, not cheap to operate, and don't actually solve comfort problems in a really well-insulated, airtight house. You actually get the problem that they are too big for the house. Efficient HVAC systems, really important, and healthy materials. Cannot overemphasize that. I want to walk in the door of my home and go, feels great to be home. It smells good. It doesn't smell like a new car. That's healthy materials. Green design saves you money in the end. That's my $78.91 heating bill. That's not my house. That's my nephews who run a solar panel business in the Yukon. That's one of their projects. Yes, Virginia, green design is affordable. Thinks about how you think about affordability. What's your time frame that you're looking at? So that steel roof, I have one on my house. Life expectancy, 60 to 80 years. Outlives my life expectancy. Cost, twice what an asphalt shingle roof is. Life expectancy, 4 times. Is it affordable? If you're keeping your house a long time, absolutely. Durable materials, so you're not stripping and refinishing, you paint on your siding. These kind of things actually save money. Material decisions we used. I had a builder about a week ago call me back. I had recommended a material to him that is a wood fiber board that replaces plywood and has an insulating value of R4. So it replaces mineral wool or styrofoam on the outside of your house. He had just priced a job for clients. He went back and repriced it and phoned me up to say, you're saving me $3,000 by using that material because of labor savings. It is a deep green material, sustainably managed Quebec forest. Saves money. So that's what I mean by it can be affordable. One of the keys to making this really affordable and accessible is modular building. It's a perfect marriage of quality control, good source of these eco-friendly materials because sometimes they're hard to find. They're not for sale at Home Depot, that board I just told you about. Built in a factory under really ideal conditions. There's no weather to worry about. Can't find my tools where they are. A less hassle for your neighbors. Laneway houses can work really well with modular buildings on some sites. Part of our assessment will fill you in if that's a question for you, if you're interested, whether it can work. You'd be surprised sites that they can actually crane a module right over the house and put them in your laneway even. So really interesting option. A little more about it because I find it really interesting, but I'm going to try not to run too much over time. So this is the express trip through modular or prefab housing. If you're interested, contact me afterwards. We'll talk more. It is not your uncle's trailer park. These are, in fact, modular homes. Ricky has one, but that's not what you want on your laneway. You don't really want this, but they can be this. This is a project in Montreal, a rendering for it. These are not renderings. This is a project in the high Arctic in the top, in Cambridge Bay and Nunavut. Built for the Canadian climate, built in Canada, built in Quebec, LEED certified for new homes. Very, very few new homes for sale in Ontario or Canada are LEED new home certified. These guys have done it with LEED Platinum certification. On the right there, a 6-unit building in the Mont-Tremblant area. This is a little digression. This is in the eastern townships of Quebec. This in December. This is what it looks like. These arrive off the truck fully finished. Windows, siding on them, deck railing on it, inside, bathroom tile, the kitchen counter, the sink, the cupboards, the faucets, the mirror on the wall. That big hole in the wall behind you where the two units are going to join together, 20 feet wide opening. That means your living room is actually the full width of your house. You can't tell you're in a modular. This is not Ricky's trailer park. How long does it take to put one of these together? A little bit of time lapse from a colleague of mine in Ottawa. Built a 6-plex recently, 10:11 a.m., 12:14, 2:48, 4:30, boom, complete. Oh, we cheated. That was a few days later. He put the siding on. But 4:30 in the afternoon, the crane was done. 3 stories, 6 apartments on the site. Pretty impressive. This is how it works, your traditional home schedule. Everything is done in order, and there are lots of building inspections on the way. Modular building, you double up on things. You build off-site in the factory, and it's fully inspected and CSA certified in the factory and does not get inspected on site. Your time on site for a laneway build is going to be somewhere between 4 to 6 weeks from start to finish. With a conventional build, think months, think probably 6 to 8 months start to finish. Big difference on the impact on your neighbors. So 7 steps to get you to a laneway suite. Step number 1, assess, figure out what you can do. Can you do it? Where can you build? What can you build? All those things I talked about at the beginning. Get a copy of our guide, work your way through it, figure this out, or call us up, $450. We're happy to come out and provide this service for you with a report and a follow-up one-on-one conversation with me to debrief. That's your full assessment. Don't want to go that route? Call me up. We will take a look online about that with you. 2, choose what's right for you. If you want to go with a ready-to-build solution and save some money on design, you need to make a few decisions which model suits you. If not, you do a custom design. Choice is yours. If you go the standard route, you want it tailored a bit, we can do it. It's like the off-the-rack suit. You can pay a little bit for an alteration. Not the same as custom design. It's a lot easier to do. Pick a set of one of our finishes. We've had an interior designer put together 4 fantastic looks, not just for laneway suites. These are really for any kind of income property situation. Green materials, durable, reasonably priced. They look fantastic together. If you want custom design, absolutely. We'll go tile shopping with you. Things like this inlaid marble mosaic on the floor. We did that for a client recently. Okay, we do custom design, no question. But you may not need it if your laneway suite is about an apartment or a rental income. If it's about your forever home, yeah, let's talk custom design. Absolutely. Make it perfect for you. 5, obtain building permits. That phrase, as of right. As of right design means you don't go to committee of adjustment. You don't waste $5,000. You do not pass go. You go straight to a building permit. Have an architect and an engineer stamp your drawings, and you will get your building permit without any problems. It's what we are good at. Have someone like myself who actually knows how to design your drawings, and your builder will love you for it because these are carpenter-friendly details. Remember, first half of my working life was spent building. Choose your builder. I said I'd come to this question. Yes, we can recommend builders for you. You can bring your own builder. I'm glad to also check references. Choose your builder carefully. This is not easy. Laneway houses are small. That does not mean they're easier. It's much easier to put a third floor addition on a house in Toronto than it is to build a laneway suite. Choose someone with experience with laneways, ideally. There aren't a lot of them out there yet, but there's a few. We know a few of them. More importantly, choose someone who gets it. They get logistics. They're really well organized, because you've got to be super organized to build on a tight site with access only from one place. Once you put your foundation in, you're not getting a truck in that site again. Or modular building. Very, very good solution. Not for every site again. I'm not saying go modular, but I love it. It really makes green building very affordable. For the same price, we can often get a much greener product out the other end. Remember, your builder does need to be Tarion registered. The city hasn't really woken up to this, but Tarion has made it clear. This is a quote from them. The builder is required to be registered with Tarion as per the Ontario New Home Warranties Plan Act. I've heard stories of builders not being registered, getting permits. This is actually violates the Act. The Tarion warranty is there for your protection. Ask for it, insist on it, you're entitled to it. It is the law. Step 7. I lied. Only 6 steps, but 7 is a nicer number, like 7 days of the week, 7 intervals in the octave. Celebrate, throw a party, invite us, let us invite a few friends to look at your house, and we'll throw the party for you. It is on us, provided we can invite a few people to show off what we did with you. This is a family. I did that deep green energy retrofit a few years ago. The boys are a lot bigger now. I got an email from them recently. The oldest one has just finished high school, went to a green school. Very pleased. We had some influence on them. 7 simple steps to a laneway house. Assessment, choose your model, tailor it, choose your finishes, get your zoning approvals and permits, choose your builder, invite us over for the party. It's that easy. To get started, download our guide. It's got everything I've talked about tonight in it. Take advantage of our full laneway suite site assessment. If you're not sure that that's right for you, you can book a chat with me to discuss your property. Siki will send out an email afterwards with all this in it. We ask for $50 for that. It's credited to your laneway suite site assessment if you move forward. So if you're uncertain if this is right for you, I will take 15 minutes with you. I will go through your property, check, does fire access look good? Are you on a public lane? Answer that question for you. If you have information on the trees, if we can get them from air photos, or you can tell me about your trees, I can help you navigate that part. So really those first 3 ABC kind of steps, I can walk you through that. It's a $50 down payment on your assessment. Okay, this is just to respect my time for this. The laneway suite site assessment, $450. One of our staff comes out to your house. In COVID times, we are still able to do this. We are deemed one of the essential services. We don't get close to you. You don't even need to speak to Gabe. He will walk in your backyard. He will take measurements and photographs. Ideally, you can let him into your basement. If that's not practical or you're not comfortable, we can FaceTime with you to see the basement. We want to see those services so we can advise you on how you're going to connect the services. We write a report about how all these rules relate to your property and what you've told us you want to do with it. We send that to you. You book a time, a Zoom call with me like this, 45 minutes to an hour, answer all of your questions, discuss what you want to do next. Okay, $450, but we're making you an offer that if you want to jump on it within 24 hours, so that's email me an e-transfer, or just raise your hand and email it to me and say, I'm in, how do I do this? Within 24 hours, instead of $450 plus tax, it's $350, including tax. That $50 credit still applies. You can email me and say, Daniel, I want the $350 offer, but I want to talk to you first. So send me the $50. We'll have a talk. If you're good to go, top it up with another $300, we book your assessment. This is a loss leader. Honestly, it's a loss leader at $450. If you're at all serious about this, take advantage of us, because this is a great deal. That's all I can say. So more information, tabc.ca/laneways. Email me. Happy to answer questions that I missed tonight by email. No charge for that. Phone if you like. Book that $50 consult. Thank you very much for your attention. I took you an extra 15 minutes over. My apologies. Thank you very much. Enjoy your evening. And as a good friend said, and I'm sure you've heard, when all of this is over and all is said and done, the only thing that's going to matter is how we treated each other. So, thank you. Good night.